Hi, my name is Haley, also known as Someday Knits, here on YouTube as well as Instagram and Ravelry. And today we're going to be making my Hidden Scraps Beanie. This is a 1x1 ribbed hat. It has a nice wide brim and it's double folded for that extra squishy coziness when you're wearing it. As the name suggests, we're going to be hiding away some of our scrap yarn into the invisible parts of the hat in order to get the most out of those single skeins that we always seem to accumulate somehow. So you only need 100 grams of fingering weight for your main color in order to knit any size, even the largest that I have here today, and our scrap yarn will make up for the rest. So go ahead and grab that single skein you've been dying to use, grab some scrap yarn, and pick up the pattern from the description box below, and let's get started. Let's start with everything you'll need for this project. You'll need scissors for when you change colors, tapestry needle for weaving in ends, a ruler, tape measure, whatever you want to be able to measure, and stitch markers. Every size needs 8 stitch markers and a set of circular needles, which are 3.5 millimeter and 16 inch. If you're doing the baby or the toddler size, you may want to use 12, but 16 inch will work for all sizes. And then obviously you'll need your yarn. So this is the combination I'm going to be using. These are my scrap yarns that will be invisible in the final hat, and this is going to be my main color, which is some hedgehog fiber sock in the color Teacup. Alright, let's get started. I forgot to mention that this pattern is written for fingering weight held double, but you could also use worsted weight if you would prefer to hold that single. And we're just going to start with a long tail cast on. Let's move that out of the way. And you want a tail obviously long enough for however many stitches you have to cast on for your size. And the pattern is linked in the description below so you can get your numbers and everything. But to start the cast on, we're going to go like this. That's how you want the yarn to sit on your fingers. And then I just grab with those 3, and I kind of grab both sides with those 3. And you're going to take your needle, lay it on top, push down, come under your thumb, and do a twist. That is 1 stitch. This counts. So that's 1, and the hat is worked in 1x1 rib, but we're not going to be casting on in rib because it's invisible, so why make it too hard? So to cast on the remainder of your stitches, you're going to take your thumb, bring it towards the point of your needle. You're going to come around and under this part that's coming towards the front side of your thumb. You're going to swing it all the way towards your pointer finger and come under this one. And then you're going to bring your needle back through that hole where you came from. And then I let go of the loop and I just stick my thumb right here to pull out that slack. If you have a tendency to cast on too tight, then you may want to do this cast on with a 4 millimeter needle instead of the 3.5. If that's not an issue you normally have, then it's fine to cast on 3.5. So we're just going to continue to do that for however many stitches your size calls for. So we're going to come under, grab this piece for the string, and pull it out the way we came from. Tighten up, come around under here, grab this one, come out the way you came in, over, and over. And then what I like to do when I'm casting on, honestly, any amount of stitches over like 40, so I pretty much do this for everything, is when I get to 20 stitches, I will just pop on a little stitch marker and let it sit there and then keep going and that way I don't have to count my entire line. If I lose my count, I can just go back to the nearest stitch marker. So I definitely recommend doing that so that you don't, if you lose your place, you don't have to start all the way over. And we're just going to continue for however many stitches you need, and then we'll meet back here to join in the round and start working our first row. I now have all my stitches casted on. I'm doing the size large, and we're ready to join in the round. I just wanted to add a quick note that when you're doing the long tail cast on, you want the tail end of the yarn to be the side that is wrapped over your thumb. So to join in the round, we're going to add a marker to mark our beginning of round, and then we're just going to kind of squish everything close to the tip. Sorry, the markers are jingling. So you want to squish everything close to the tip so that we don't have a long ladder. Even if you do get a ladder, it doesn't really matter because, like I said, this whole edge is going to be invisible. And then you can see this braid from where we cast on stitches. You want to make sure that braid is on the same side all the way around and it doesn't do a twisty number around the needles, because if it's twisted, you'll get a twisted hat. It won't be a flat circle. So just take a second to check that your braid is at the bottom with no twists in it, and we're ready to start. You're going to have the tail and the working yarn, that needle in your right hand, and the first stitch we cast on in your left hand, and you can hold the yarn however you want. I will say I'm continental and I also knit combination, so my purls may look different than your purls. You don't have to knit exactly the way I'm knitting, just purl whichever way you're comfortable purling. If you are completely new and you don't know how to knit or purl, then feel free to do as I do, if you want. So, we have these close to the tip. We're going to have our working yarn kind of taut if you're knitting continental, and we're going to come in this first stitch knitwise and knit one, and then we're going to move on to the second one. We're going to bring our yarn to the front, come into this second stitch purlwise, and purl one, and we're going to repeat that all the way down. So we're going to knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one, trying to keep the yarn out of the way so you can see. And this first row is gonna feel a little tight because the cast on edge isn't as stretchy as like the center of knit fabric. So don't fret, just keep pushing. And you're just gonna continue to knit one, purl one all the way around this first row. And then you can already see these that we have knitted are much stretchier than the rest of the cast on edge. So just work your way around this first row, knit one, purl one, and if you decided to go ahead and put the markers at every 20, all sizes have an even number of stitches, so every time you get to a marker you should be on a purl stitch. So this last stitch will be purl one, and then I will be at my marker, and that'll be the same for every marker that you place to count. As you come to the markers, you can remove them, but be sure to leave your beginning of round marker. Okay, so I will go ahead and finish this row and meet you back at the beginning of round. Alright, I have made it to my marker. My last stitch was a purl stitch. You can see the purl bump right there. So that's a good sign that everything worked out. Not necessarily a guarantee, but a good sign. As you can see, I have this little ladder right here. And the way I go about tightening that up is when I knit this first stitch, I'm going to go in knitwise. And I just pull like that. Just pull it and knit. And you can see between these two stitches, the ladder has shortened up significantly. But now this stitch is a little big. So when I purl, I bring my yarn to the front. And because I'm knitting combination, my purl may be mounted different than yours is. So for me, I'm going to come through this back leg purlwise and pull. And I'll do the first maybe 3 or 4 stitches with a little extra tug. And then that's about it. The stitches look pretty even. The ladder is gone. So I'm free to just knit as normal, and I'm just going to knit 1, purl 1. As you can see, this is already much looser and much stretchier than that first row. So not everything is going to be as tedious as that first row. Because my scrap yarns are so high contrast, it's a little bit hard to see, but you can start to see the ribbing forming. There's my V's for the knit stitches and my bars for the purl stitches. And you're just going to continue to knit 1, purl 1 until your fabric measures whatever length is necessary for your size. Alright, I'm just going to finish up these last 2 stitches and slip my beginning of round marker. And when you have knit to the length that is appropriate for whatever size you want, you can go ahead and break your yarn. I like to leave an extremely long tail. It's not necessary for it to be this long, but I just like it. And we are ready to join in our main color. So I have mine caked up, which makes it a little bit easier to hold double. You can just pull from the center and from the outside. So I'm just going to double it up real quick. And I just add in a new color by continuing to knit. So I'm going to hold the end in my right hand over here on this side, and then I have the left side set up the way I normally would knit. And I'm just going to knit this first stitch, purl the second, and then after maybe 4 to 6 stitches, I don't have to worry about holding this in my right hand. You can let it go, it'll be fine. So you're going to continue to work in the 1x1 rib, and I will come back when we're at the beginning of round markers so you can see what the next row is going to look like where we joined in the yarn. When you get to this last stitch before we joined in the new round, because it's not tied in the knot or anything like that, it's going to be really loose, as you can see. So when we work that stitch, we're going to work it as normal, nothing special, but just be mindful that it'll be loose. So I just work it as is, and then once I have it off the needle, then I'll just go in and tug the back and then move to the next. This is going to be really loose as well because it's the first stitch of where we joined in the yarn. So knit as normal, and then I just tug the back. Then moving forward, you're going to want to just be mindful not to knit these first 2 or 3 stitches super aggressively, like yanking super hard. But as you can see, this is only the 5th and it's already fine. things get set in place pretty quickly. And then as you go, you'll notice a hole right here from where we joined in the yarn, and just don't worry about it. Keep going as it is for the length required for your main color for your size. And before we fold the brim over to knit it together, we'll reconcile all this right here. So don't worry, nothing special to do, just keep on working in rib in the round, and I will meet back with you when we have finished our main color. So I finished my main color, and now we're starting to get a idea of what the final hat is going to look like. This is what you're going to see from the outside. This is what you're not going to see. And I have this long tube. We're going to do a couple of things to prep for folding the brim over, so that when you wear it, everything stays nice and in place. And to start, we're going to weave in some ends. So I'm just going to slip a couple stitches without working them, just two, so that my beginning of round marker doesn't fall off, and pull my needles out just for extra security. So when we fold the brim, we're going to fold the inside of the tube to the outside. So that means this, everything we're looking at, is going to be considered the wrong side of the fabric, meaning the side that's not going to be seen when you're wearing the hat. So these ends from our long tail cast on are the first ends we're going to weave in. And you're going to take your tapestry needle, get the yarn through. And then ribbing is pretty simple as far as weaving in ends. To have a nice join, which isn't completely necessary since it's going to be hidden, but just because it's kind of my routine at this point, I come in under this bar to bring everything together, and then I'm going to go up the sides of one side, push it through. My tail was kind of short. And then I'm going to come under the two legs of the stitch above where I came out. Pull that through. And then because my tail is so short, I'm going to go down the other side of these stitches, push my needle through, but not all the way through, and then thread the needle. So there you have it. That's the bottom one, and we can just trim the end like that. And then we have these ends on the inside from where we change colors. So our first step is going to be to get them to the outside of the fabric. So I'm gonna thread we'll thread the needle, and I'm going to go, you see where this stitch is coming around and out this direction? So I'm going to take the end of this yarn and just kind of poke it through this next stitch and pull it out on the other side of the fabric. And then I'm going to do the mirror version of that for the contrast color. So thread the needle, the stitch is coming from over here going that way, and I'm just going to poke it through the other side and pull it to the front. So now our ends are on the correct side, and we can just weave them in as we did the end on the bottom edge, the cast on edge. So I'm going to thread the needle. I'm going to come up this side, maybe like 4 or 5 stitches up, and then pull my end through, come under the 2 legs above where the end came out, pull that through, and then come down the other side. Pull that through, and then I like to just give it a little tug so that it's not pulled too tight, and it'll move, I guess, more naturally with the fabric, and then we can snip. It's okay if these are a little long because it's going to get tucked away when we fold it. So I'm going to do the same for the other tail. Thread the ends. And then to keep the light colors together, I'm going to come over here and go down. Come out, then I'm going to go under the 2 legs of the stitch below, and then come up the other side. And pull it through. And then give it another little stretch so everything is even, and snip. Okay, so the nice part is half of the ends for the entire project are already woven in. And we're going to flip our cast on edge up towards our needles with the contrast color facing you. So you want it on the outside. And I just kind of get it a little bit even all the way around. Sorry for the noise of the needles. So now we're ready to knit together the cast on edge and our live stitches, and I'm just going to try to zoom out a little bit so we can get a better view of what's going on. So this will all make a lot more sense in a couple of seconds when we actually start working the folded edge or the cast on edge to the fabric. But I just wanted to quickly add a little section to show you exactly where I'm picking up yarn, because I feel like my contrast color can be a little bit crazy to look at. So before we move forward, the cast on edge with the long tail cast on, it leaves this braid-ish on the bottom edge. And so normally when you're picking up stitches to say add a sleeve or add a collar, you'll go under both of those legs. For this step, we don't need to do all of that. So when you're looking at your cast on edge, your purl stitches, your purl columns, whatever, will have a little knot. You can see it right there. Maybe you can see that one, it's kind of dark, but these little knot looking balls. So when you find the knot at the bottom of your purl column, you're going to want to pick up the yarn that comes out to the left. So here's the little knot for the purl stitch, and I'm going to pick up just the yarn that comes out to the left. So as you can see, the back side is not picked up. It's not on my needle. I just need the 2 strands that I'm holding double. So in my case, the pink and the brown. Yours may be the same color, but you just need 2 strands on your needle, and this is going to help give you the cleanest join and the best look from the right side. Just take my word for it. I don't know the science behind it, but that's what you want to do. So on a knit column, you'll see a similar little knot. Sometimes it looks more off to the right, like it would be part of a V, but a similar little knot, and you're going to take the yarn that comes out to the left from that knot. So you're going to pick up those 2 strands right there. Again, I've only picked up the 2 strands and the other side is still on the cast on edge. So that's all you need. You'll find the knot, you'll pick up the yarn to the left, and then once you get the hang of it, you'll also kind of see that it's just the next 2 from the previous one you picked up. So if I pick up this right here, the next one is going to be right here, and you go along the edge. So hopefully that makes sense, and now we will skip back to how you're actually going to work this cast on edge to your live stitches. If you have any questions or you get stuck with anything, feel free to comment any questions, concerns, mishaps in the comment section down below, and I'll get back to you. It's really no worries at all, and I'm happy to help. So if you're stuck on something, just comment and we'll figure it out together. Don't worry. Okay, so there's 2 ways to knit the cast on edge to your live stitches. You can do it with the knitting needles or you can do it with a crochet hook. We're going to start with the knitting needles and then I'll show you how to do it with the crochet hook if you'd prefer to do it that way. You'll get the same results. So it's just whichever you prefer, personal preference. So where these little ends are sticking out from where we wove in our end, that's our beginning of round. And I know that the back side, this purl stitch, coordinates with the front side of this knit stitch, the first stitch of my round, and you can follow the V all the way down if you just want to be super sure, and then get the stitch. So you want the bottom side of this stitch so that you're working the 2 sides together, and we're going to start by lifting up one edge of that stitch. You don't have to go through the whole stitch like you're picking up stitches. You really just need 1 bar to keep it secure, if you can see that right there. So I'm just picking up 1 bar, and then I'm going to slip this first stitch knitwise, and that's to make sure it doesn't get twisted, and I'm going to slide my left needle under the 2 and knit them together. So very similar to an SSK, but 1 stitch is coming from the cast on edge instead of 2 stitches from the left needle. So then for your purl stitches, again, you're going to pick up 1 side of that bar from the cast on edge, but since this is a purl and you don't want this stitch to be twisted, we're going to come in, we moved our yarn to the front, we're going to slip this stitch purlwise off the needles, and then we are going to pick up, let me get the yarn out the way so you can see, then we are going to pick up that bar. So once we have both of those bars on the needle, and make sure your yarn is in front first, you're going to slide your needle under the 2 stitches on the right needle, and then you're going to bring this yarn around and purl them together like so. So it's a little finicky, but it'll give you the cleanest finish. So that's how you work it with knitting needles. I'll go through it one more time just so you can see. So our next stitch is a purl on the front side and a knit on our needle. So we're going to pick up the bar, slip this stitch purlwise, insert our needle into both, and knit 2 together like an SSK. Oops. And then we are going to slip this stitch purlwise, insert our needle under the bar of the next knit stitch, and then slip our needle into the 2 stitches, and we're going to purl them together. And you'll just continue that knit purl all the way around until you're back at the beginning of round. So now I'm going to undo so I can show you the crochet hook. For the crochet hook method, you're going to work things very similarly. However, because you have a crochet hook and it's not attached to your cord, you will have to put your stitch onto your needles, and you can do it 1 or 2 stitches at a time. So both methods have their tedious steps. It's just whichever you prefer. Personally, I prefer the crochet hook. So you're going to find the purl column. You can again use your tail end as a marker if you wove your tail end through that first stitch. So I'm going to pick up the bar from the cast on edge onto my crochet hook. I'm going to slip this first stitch knitwise, and I'm going to pick up my yarn and pull it through the 2 loops on my hook. So the process of working the 2 stitches together with the crochet hook is much easier, but like I mentioned, because you have a crochet hook, you're going to have to come around and add the stitch to the needle, and then I just tighten it up with my finger. So for the purl stitches, you're going to move your yarn to the front. You're going to come over here and put your crochet hook through the first stitch purlwise. You'll come under the bar of the next knit column, and then you'll grab your yarn and pull through both, and then you can just add that stitch to the needles. You don't have to pull it super tight, but just to even out the tension. So I'll show you that again. The yarn goes back to the back. We're working a knit stitch, so we're going to pull up the edge of a purl column. We're going to slip knitwise. It looks like it may look funny because this loop is sitting backwards, but this is knitwise. And then you're going to pull through both and add it to the needles. Move the yarn to the front. You're going to come in to this next stitch purlwise. You're going to come under the bar of the, let's see a good way to show this. You're going to come under the bar of the next knit stitch right here, and then you're going to pull your yarn through and add it to the needles, and you're just going to go along all the way around that first round. And as you can see, the join is pretty invisible. Sometimes if you have super high contrast colors, they may peek through on the purl stitches. You can see like the tiniest bit of brown under this purl bump. You can't really see it through this. But if it's something that you're nervous about, the contrast colors showing in your purl columns, then you can work this one round as all purls. And I say all purls because, again, this is going to be the outside, so it'll make this all knits for just this one round. It's not going to make a huge difference in the visual look of the final hat because this is the edge that is going to sit flat when you're wearing it. So somebody would have to be looking like, you know, at a weird angle to see it. And if you go right back to the rib on the next round, it really balances out. So that is an option if you're struggling to keep this section clean of your contrast color. But I do find that if your cast on edge was tight enough, it doesn't have to be extremely tight or anything like that, but when you have a pretty snug cast on edge, it tends to just tuck behind the main color. So if you look right here, let me get it to focus, and let's make it not upside down. So if you look right here, you can see that my main color is sitting on top, and if I kind of pull it down, then you can see that brown contrast color is kind of tucked behind it, but naturally that main color sits on top. And if you're sure not to twist your stitches or anything like that, that's normally the result. So you can see for this second one as well, the main color is sitting on top and the contrast color is pulled to the back. So you should be fine, but if you are extra worried about it, then you can again work this all as pearls, so they'll all be knits, and you can be super sure that the contrast color is not going to show through. If your main color and your contrast color are not that far apart, you really won't have an issue at all. So I'm going to go through this just one more time. You're going to come under the purl stitch. So the columns, the bar that you come under is a little bit to the left of the column. So you're going to come under the purl side for your knit stitch. Smooth these needles, go and slip the knit stitch knitwise. Then you're going to grab your yarn and pull through everything. And then you can move your yarn to the front, slip this stitch purlwise, come under the knit stitch, and you need to make sure you're still behind your yarn. So come under the edge of the knit stitch, and then you're going to grab your yarn and pull it through, and then you can slip 2 at a time if you'd like. And so there you go. You're going to continue in whichever method you prefer, the knitting needles or the crochet hook, and knit the entire brim to the stitches. Your knit stitches on your needles should be joining with a purl column, and your purl stitches on your needles with a knit column. So if something is not matching up, you know something went wrong somewhere, and you just kind of want to check it out so that your ends align and there's no buckling or anything like that. So go ahead and work this row, take your time, and we will meet back to prepare to switch colors again. Okay, so we are almost back to the beginning of round. I'm just going to work these last 2 stitches. And there we are. So your next round is going to be worked exactly like every other round. Knit 1, purl 1, and you're going to work about a centimeter. For all sizes, you're going to want to work about a centimeter, which can be anywhere from 4 to 6 rows depending on your gauge. And this first row after we knit everything together is going to almost feel like the original cast on edge. So it's going to be a little tight. It's not gonna flow around the needles quite as fast. So if it feels a little bit rockier, that's completely normal. You're in the right spot. And if you're like me, I didn't pay too much attention to the way that I was placing these stitches onto the needle from the crochet hook. So just be mindful as you're going around not to twist any of these stitches. And you're just gonna go and go and go until you are back at the beginning of a round, and then complete a couple more rounds until you get to 1 centimeter, and then we will meet back to change back to our contrast color. We're back at beginning of round, and we have a centimeter of our main color. So for me, I have 5 rounds if you count the round where we knit everything together. So knit it together and then 4 additional rounds. And it's a little bit longer than a centimeter, but for this pattern it's better to be a little too long than a little too short. So we are going to join in our contrast color again. I'm going to clip a super long tail. It really doesn't have to be that long, and as we did before, we're just going to work in the 1x1 rib, holding everything steady, and then by the time you have a couple of stitches, you can go ahead and let that tail end go. So we're going to go around and around and around in the 1x1 rib until you have met the length for whatever size you're knitting, which should be the same as whatever length you needed for the first patch. So I will go ahead and finish this section of the contrast color up, and then we will meet back here to make our last color switch and start closing up the hat. Alright, we are back at the beginning of round, well, almost. Okay, we're going to finish up these last 2 stitches, and we are back at the beginning of round, if I can slip my marker. And you should have something similar to this. We are going to do our final color transition. So you can snip your yarn. I can't find my scissors right now, so I'm going to do that in a second. But take your main color. That was probably too long. There we go. Hold the tail with your right hand, and you're just going to come in and start to knit as you would. Knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, and then you're good to let the right side go. Gonna move my tail out of the way and continue to work in the 1x1 rib. So as with all the other sections, you're going to knit this to whatever length is required for your size, and then we will meet back to go over setting up for the decreases to close the top of the hat. So we are almost there. I'll see you guys in a second. Finishing up this last round, I'm going to slip my marker, pull my needle so hopefully it doesn't fall off. And you should have something that looks like this. At this point you can fold your brim over and you'll start to get a good idea of what your finished hat will look like. You can see our contrast colors completely hidden away, and we don't have any peek through in the rib round where we knit the cast on edge to the fold. So my colors are pretty high contrast, and it hasn't peeked through at all on this edge. So if you have something similar to this, you are right on track. Our next step is going to be to add in the rest of our markers so that we can mark where we're going to decrease. And we also need to switch out our needles. So if you're using interchangeable needles, you're going to need a longer cord. If you're using fixed circulars, then you can just grab your longer set. I'm going to be working on a 38-inch setup, but anywhere from 32 to 40 should be fine to work the decreases on magic loop. If you want to use double pointed needles, feel free. I don't have double pointed needles in this size, so unfortunately I won't do a demo for that setup, but it'll absolutely work if you prefer to use double pointed needles. So our first step in the swap, if you have interchangeables, we're going to need to pull out our right needle and remove it. And I'm going to replace mine with a stopper. And then we're going to take that right needle and we're going to add it to the end of our cable. And I'm just going to tighten it up real quick. There we go. And then the other end of my cable is a stopper for now, just to make sure nothing falls off. So we are going to continue working in rib. And pull the stopper out of the way. I'm just going to knit this first stitch, purl the next as usual, and then continue working in rib for however many stitches are designated for the size that you cast it on. And then when we get to that point, we'll put on our marker. So I'm at my first stopping point. Your last stitch that you worked should have been a knit stitch for all sizes. And I'm going to grab one of these markers, pop that on, work my next stitches, and pop on another marker. And then we are going to go back to the original stitch count for this first section. It's going to be the same. Okay, I'm going to finish that count up, add my marker, and then for this section we are only going to work 3 of the stitches and then pull our needle through. And this is the long cable that we're switching to. So we're going to pull out a lot of cord, give yourself a lot of room, and then we're going to come across, work the other 2, and place our marker. And then go back to your first stitch count, work all of those stitches. After you've worked those, you're going to place another marker. Work your 5. Another marker. So we're going to finish up that section. Oopsie. And place our final marker. So if you are working magic loop, we're going to work just 3 of these final stitches. Then we have this crazy looking situation. And I'm going to slip these 2 final stitches, pull my cord through so that they don't go anywhere. Oops, bumped the camera. And then I'm going to remove this needle. Take that off. And then I'm going to take my stopper off. Oh, I should have left that. Add my needle back. And then I'm going to slip these last 2 back onto the right and pull my cord through to shift for magic loop. And then I will work these last 2 stitches. Oh, and I forgot that my beginning of round marker was on this other cable. So you should be back at beginning of round. And now we're going to work the decreases, but I'm going to switch my battery out so it doesn't die while I'm talking. I changed out my markers to hopefully cut down the noise of them rubbing on the table we'll see, but we're going to start our decreases. We're going to slip the first marker, and I just want to take a pause to again mention that I knit combination. So my knit stitches are mounted normal, my purl stitches are mounted in the reverse direction. If you look from the top, you can kind of see they point at two different angles. It's a little bit hard to tell, but our first decrease is going to be a purl two together. You can work it however you work your purl two together, it doesn't matter. But if you do knit combination, I'm going to show you how I work it. I move my yarn to the front, I slip the first stitch knitwise, the second stitch purlwise, slide my needle into the two stitches, and I purl them together. And this will give you a nice clean decrease without twisting anything up. You're going to work across to your next marker. Sorry, you're going to work to 2 stitches before the marker. So when you have 2 stitches left before your next marker, you're going to purl 2 together through the back loop. Again, however you like to do it is perfectly fine. Just make sure you're going through the back loop. Sorry, let me slow that down. You're gonna So when you're 2 stitches before your next marker, we're going to decrease again, and this decrease is going to be a purl 2 together through the back loop. We're going to bring our yarn to the front, and then we're going to come through the back loop of the stitch next to the marker. We're going to go through the both of them to grab our yarn and purl them together. So I'm going to slide my needle under both these stitches, and you can see me coming through to the front, and then you're going to purl them together however you like to purl. Then you're going to slip the marker, work this little section, slip the marker, and again we are going to purl 2 together, move the yarn to the front, purl 2 together however you like to purl 2 together. And then you're going to keep repeating this all the way around, where you decrease, work, decrease, work, decrease, all the way around, and then we will work a round of just regular working in pattern, and I will meet you at the beginning of round. But first, actually, while we're here, let's go over the end of a row. So again, I'm 2 stitches before my marker, and I'm going to purl 2 together through the back loop. Get my needle through. Okay. And then I only have these 3 stitches left on my front half. So I'm going to work those, slide everything down, and then I like to pull the back cord through. Make sure you're not pulling the front or you'll pull your needle through the stitches. So the back cord until my needle is lined up, and then I pull out this front needle so I have length, and then you can flip over like regular magic loop to work the back half of the hat. My needle went through the middle of my yarn. And this is where you will work those last 2 stitches. Slip your marker and begin your decrease for this half of the hat, and then we'll meet back at beginning of round. I'm back on the front of my hat, and beginning of round is this first red marker, so I'm going to work the last 2 stitches of the previous round, and now we're at the start. So because we decreased and our decrease was a purl, we are going to begin with a purl stitch and then knit 1, purl 1. So where you see work in pattern, work in established, rib, work as the stitches show, all of those mean the same thing, which is if you see a knit stitch, knit it, and if you see a purl stitch, purl it. And we're going to just go around working as the stitches show for this entire round. So again, when we get towards our markers, knit what you see. I'm going to purl this one because it's a purl stitch, slip my marker, and this is also a purl stitch, so I'm going to purl this one as well. So it's not completely knit 1, purl 1. There'll be slight interruptions in the pattern for this round, but just knit what you see. Alright, as normal, I'm going to shuffle my needles around, and our second decrease round is going to be slightly different, but pretty much the same concept. So again, however you prefer to work these types of decreases, go right ahead. It doesn't have to be done exactly the way I'm doing it. If you don't know what you're most comfortable with, then feel free to do it the way I'm doing it. So our first decrease is going to be a knit 2 together, and because my purl stitches are already mounted backwards, I'm just going to go ahead and knit them together. Nothing special needs to be done, and that back stitch will be twisted and it makes it super neat and crisp. We're going to work across to 2 stitches before our next marker. And then we are going, when we're 2 stitches before our next marker, we're going to do an SSK. I think, sorry, let me back that up. I think this is maybe called an improved SSK, but I'm going to slip the first stitch knitwise and the second stitch purlwise so that the back stitch ends up twisted, and then knit them together, and that just helps keep things nice and neat. So work the stitches up until the next marker and slip your marker, and we'll go over the decreases one more time. So the first one is going to be a simple knit 2 together, work across, and when we're 2 stitches before our next marker, we're going to SSK. Slip the first one knitwise, slip the second one purlwise, slide your left needle into the 2 stitches on the right, knit them together. And just in case I went over this first knit 2 together too quickly, all you're doing is coming into that second stitch. You're going to put your needle in knitwise and push it back so you come out through the first stitch, so that there's 2 stitches on your needle, and then you just grab your yarn and knit them together. But I'm not supposed to decrease right there, so I'm just going to let it go. And you will continue the same decreases on the back side, and then work another round in pattern as established. So it's a total of 4 rounds. You have the first round where we decreased with the purl 2 together and purl 2 together through the back loop. You have a round of working as the stitches show, just knit what you see. And then we have a round of the knit decreases where we knit 2 together and we SSK. And then the fourth round is working as the patterns show. So purl decreases, work as they show, knit decreases, work as they show. You're going to complete this set of 4 rounds, however many times is required for the size that you're knitting in the pattern. And we will meet back together when it is time to close up the top of the crown. Alright, so I've worked these 2 stitches so that I could get back to my beginning of round. You should have something similar to this with a smallish hole and most of a hat. We're going to work 4 more rounds to close up this hole, and we're essentially just going to decrease a lot in these 4 rounds. So we're going to knit 2 together. For me, that means I have to rearrange these and then knit them together. And then we're going to purl 2 together, which I also need to do a little rearranging, but we're going to need to remove this marker. So regardless of how you're working your decreases, you will have to slip this one to start and then purl these 2 together. And then we are going to knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, and remove the marker. Then again, we're going to work 2 decreases, so I'm just going to rearrange my stitches so I can knit 2 together. Oops. And then I'm going to slip this so that I can get this marker off. And move my yarn to the front to purl 2 together. And then knit 1, purl 1, and we reach the end of the first needle. Do a little shuffle. And we're going to knit 1, purl 1 one more time. Remove the marker. And we're just going to work that same thing 2 more times. So we're going to knit 2 together. I can pick up both strands, and then purl 2 together. Take off this marker. Knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. Remove the marker. Knit 2 together. Take this marker off. Purl 2 together. Knit 1, purl 1. And we've reached the end of this needle. And our last knit 1, purl 1 is on this front needle. And then we're just going to work a round as the stitches show. And if you did the previous round correctly, it should just be knit 1, purl 1 all the way to the beginning. Okay, we're coming back to the beginning. And this next round, we are going to decrease our stitch count in half. So everything's going to be a decrease. we're going to do an SSK, and then we are going to purl 2 together. All the way around. So SSK, purl 2 together. Sorry, need more yarn. So the end of this needle will be an SSK. And then we're going to shuffle. We're going to pull our yarn around the needle because this first one is going to be a purl 2 together. Then SSK, purl 2 together, SSK, purl 2 together, and again the last on this needle will be an SSK. So we're going to shuffle, and be sure that you work these last 2 stitches on the front needle as a purl 2 together, because your beginning of round is not until the marker. Oops. Okay. So this next round we're going to do the exact same thing and just decrease everything. SSK, if I can do it. There we go. Purl 2 together. And we have an odd number of stitches on each needle. So what I do is I kind of pull this cord back until this needle pops through, so that this last stitch, I don't work it, I just pop it around to the other side, and then we'll pull this needle through. We ended on a purl 2 together, so we're going to start this side on an SSK. And then again, purl 2 together. SSK. And then we have only 1 stitch left, so I'm going to pull this back cord, pop the needle through, and come around so that there's 2 stitches to work as a purl 2 together. Bring my yarn to the front. Can I do it? There we go. So at this point, we can remove our beginning of round marker because our knitting is done. We're going to cut a nice long tail, if I can find scissors. And we're going to take our tapestry needle to thread this end through the stitches on our needle. So we're going to take our end, thread it through, and then this I just kind of pull so it doesn't fall off. And you're going to do everything knitwise. So I'm going to slip this first one knitwise, and I'm going to go through my version of knitwise. Since this stitch is mounted backwards, I go through the back loop, but this is still knitwise, so everything's knitwise. Pull the yarn through a little bit, get our needles around. And then slip everything knitwise. And this is my last stitch that just fell off. And this stitch looks huge, so before I pull this thread through, I'm just going to tighten that last stitch up a little bit, pull the thread through everything, and just pull it tight. So the top of the hat should look something like this now. And I'm going to take my needle still threaded and just go back through everything. So let me try to turn this brightness down so you can see a little better. So we're just going to come through those last stitches we just sewed through. I just like to go through them one more time to make sure everything is super secure. And then I kind of go down and come out the inside of the hat. So there's the top of the crown. Kind of makes this spirally moment. And then we're going to flip inside out. And we have these 5 ends to weave. So as a quick reminder, I'll go over the end weaving one more time. I'm just going to come up into one of these knit stitch columns, go up one side, as many as you like, and you don't have to pull it too tight, but you can pull it so that that stitch looks the same size as all the other stitches. And then come under the 2 legs above where I came out, come back down the other side. Come on. Okay. Pull that through and cut. And you're going to do the same for these 2 ends here. And then for the crown, I just take the end and kind of shove it down one of these purl bumps, and then go down whatever knit column is just closest to it. So I'm gonna come under here and go into this guy, come down one side, go under the 2 legs, and come up the other side. Loosen it. And now we have a super cute finished hat with a little scrap yarn moment. We've made the most of our single skeins. We've finally gotten rid of some of those scraps out of our endlessly growing pile. And we have something we can wear over and over and over again. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate the support, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.